Peace Prize of the German book trade. Can literature bridge divisions? In the interview, the writer and Peace Prize winner, David Grossman.
David Grossman, on Sunday you'll be awarded the Peace Prize of the German book trade. You will give a speech and many Germans, and not only Germans, will listen to you. Will your words also be heard in Israel, back home?
Definitely, yes. You know, even though my opinions sometimes are very critical towards the government or the army or acts that Israel does, yet I think that Israelis understand that it comes from someone who sees Israel as his home and is totally committed to this country, and everything I say means to or is meant to make Israel a better place to live, better quality of life, and to enjoy situation of peace.
You say Israelis. Do you make a distinction between Israelis and the politicians? Because they seem to be quite deaf towards what intellectuals and writers like you and Amos Oz and others say.
In a strange way, we have now a government in Israel that is more extreme than the majority of the people. In a way, they over-advocate the Israelis, or let's say they advocate more the fears of the Israelis, of most of the Israelis. They do listen, you know, it's strange, but things that Amos Oz, my friend, or A.B. Yehoshua, or myself, that we said 30 years ago, and then we were regarded almost as traitors, now you can see them from someone like Benjamin Netanyahu or Ehud Olmert before him or Ariel Sharon before him. It takes time for such formulations to infiltrate into the mind of the leaders, of the politicians. In the end, it does. It succeeds.
You go on a lot of lectures and readings throughout the world, and in Germany now at the moment. Is it unnerving when people ask you more about politics than about your work, your literature?
Well, it depends, because when I come to literary places, when I speak in universities or in reading groups, the major theme is literature and writing. And may I tell you, for me, this is the most precious thing to do and to talk about. But of course, coming from Israel, which is such a polluted situation by politics, yes, it's almost inevitable that people ask about that. And beyond that, politics is much more accessible for the majority of people. Everybody understands in politics. Everybody is a kind of a hidden politician. Less people or fewer people are experts about literature or tuned to the complexity of literature. Now, for me, there is no question. I mean, I prioritize literature not only as a literary being, but also as a way to understand the political situation. You can understand so much more via literature, via the nuanced way of describing reality, of putting together all the inner contradiction of a given situation. It's so much more in contact with real life than experiencing this life through the media, through the papers.
And there we are at your book, at your most recent novel, Eine Frau flieht vor einer Nachricht, in English, To the End of the Land, which has just appeared in the English-speaking world. It's a compelling tale of an Israeli family, and especially of a mother and woman, and how the violence and fear of life in Israel transform their lives. After reading the book, I asked myself, how do you cope? The writer, how does he cope with that fragility of life in Israel? I know it's a difficult question.
It is a difficult question, and my family has experienced it in the most tough way. We lost our son Uri in the war in Lebanon 4 years ago. But even before that, the anxiety, the fear for the children, for our beloved ones, having to live all our life in fear, in violence, violence that is addressed at us, violence that we inflict on others. It's not a good situation or a good air to breathe. How do I cope with it? I write. This is my way. I always found that for me, writing is the best way to, to find myself or to create a place for me in a situation that stopped to be a place and stopped to be a home. In such a situation, there is such a temptation to use the language that is suggested or imposed to you by the big systems who runs the business, the government, the army, the war, your own fears, the point of view of your enemy. All these, they have their influence, they radiate on you, and they force you to use a language that they want you to use. And it's a false language. It's not adequate to what usually the individual feels. It does not allow nuances. It does not allow inner contradictions, complexity, which is the heart of such a situation. By writing, I allow myself to regain my individuality.
And to get out of the victim status, as you have
because when I write, I stand anew vis-a-vis this arbitrariness, vis-a-vis my anxieties, my despair sometimes, my fears. I'm able to redefine myself. I'm not a victim of this situation. I'm liberated. And, the whole idea of creating Israel was that we shall never be victims again. And it's a great idea. And it's very meaningful for me, as the whole idea of Israel is very meaningful for me. And yet, I look at Israel with all its enormous military might and see how paralyzed we are in front of the situation, in front of our neighbors, enemies, partners for the future, unable to move, stuck in front of them, exactly as they are stuck, but I come with demands to my own country and my own leadership. And how can it be that still, with all this military might, we are still victims? How come we cannot tell the difference between the echoes of the real tragedies that befell us in the past and the real dangers that lie before us now? All these can be solved if Israel will have the courage to rewrite its story anew, not to be victim of the situation.
Mario Vargas Llosa, who was just won the Nobel Prize in Literature, has a very interesting approach. He said literature is not about writing novels, but about changing life. Not telling stories about life, but changing life itself. Is that something you could subscribe to?
It appeals to me. First of all, I congratulate my friend Mario Vargas Llosa. I think it's a wonderful choice. At last, a very, very good choice. When I write, I don't think of changing life. I have one idea. I want to tell a good story. This is the basic, natural, almost instinct of a writer. But of course, if you write well, if you do not protect yourself, if you allow the flexibility of telling things in a new language that suddenly the reader say, I was not aware that it can be told in such a way, and suddenly you breathe differently even when you read it, and suddenly you feel that in this world that is such a world of anonymity, of indifference, of self-effacement, suddenly someone brought back your face to you, allowed you to have your original face. This is maybe to change life.
But going into politics to change life, like Vargas Llosa did for a while, is not an option for you? Has never been?
No. I'm first and foremost a writer.
Thank you very much for the interview. David Grossman, here in the Authors Lounge of the Frankfurter Hof during the Frankfurt Book Fair. And again, congratulations for the Peace Prize of the German Book Trade.
Thank you very much.